I am Margie, and this is Shining Bright, where we share the stories of everyday women who are doing amazing things. And speaking of amazing things, I've got Jennie Smith here with me on my deck.
Greatest place to be in the state of Iowa right now.
Yes. And just to tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about, we started off with a Bloody Mary. I'll
We're going to do an air cheers.
Yeah, we're staying distance from each other. And I won't drink, so you don't have to listen to me on camera or on the sound. But anyway, it's a little hint of what we're going to talk about. Tomatoes.
Yes.
I guess you being here is a hint of what we're going to talk about too.
It's kind of like an imagery that just keeps following me sometimes a little bit. But it's also the time of year because this is early spring. We're getting ready in the state of Iowa to approach the last frost-free date.
Okay.
So that means it's exciting because then you can kind of put some crops out in the garden that are more cold sensitive.
Yep.
You know, right now in the garden, you can easily have things like radishes and spinach, all of the things that we enjoy in colder climates kind of putting out first.
Right.
So we are going to prep today to talk about some things such as tomatoes, of course, one of my favorites.
Yes.
And how we can start them right now so that we can enjoy the bountiful fruit, because as I've always shared with you, it's a fruit, not a vegetable.
It is a fruit. Yep.
It's a fruit, not a vegetable.
Yep.
And then, and how we can hopefully then enjoy Bloody Marys on this deck again in a couple months.
Maybe it'll be warmer out too, because we're like bundled up out here right now. But,
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, I have to tell you that this episode started with a Bloody Mary story. Erin, who's not here, social distancing, is she was like, they grow their own tomatoes, and she had all these questions, and she was like, I need Jennie. I need to know from Jennie. And I really, she's like, my goal is to make my own Bloody Mary mix by the end of this summer.
Ooh,
so
yes.
I hope she does.
And what a great use for when you have what we call maybe sometimes a surplus. Maybe you got a bit overambitious planting, and you have a surplus of tomatoes and you don't want them to go to waste. Bloody Mary canning or mixing is a great use for that.
And the ugly ones could go in there too, right? Like I learned that from you when we came and visited you for your episode. Like if they are split or there's something with them, you can still use those for things.
I even go for the ones that have the wormhole. I'm not afraid.
Protein, added protein. Well, and the other reason I need your help is because I've been growing this. And it says it's a tomato plant, and I know that it is. It says it's an heirloom cherry tomato plant.
Okay.
And I have been growing it in my little Aero garden, which is a little hydroponic tiny garden in my kitchen, and I've had it for like 2 years, and it grows things like dill and cilantro, great basil. Yep. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a tomato plant and put it in there because I don't like tomatoes. But last year I started. This is all because of you. I started trying cherry tomatoes, and if I put them in with balsamic, and I squeeze all the seeds out, and little cubes of mozzarella, it's wonderful. I like that.
Big cubes.
Yeah, bigger than the tomatoes, preferably. But so this is the tomato that I've gotten out of this plant so far.
Where? Oh no, it's right there. Okay,
yeah, sorry.
It was a bad angle.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm very proud, to be honest.
But so something is amiss. I'm not sure if it's the plant or my growing, the soil, it got way too big for the garden inside, and I had to move it out here. So this tomato, for anybody listening, is like the size of, what is this even the size of?
So we call that size, they're actually tomatoes that are supposed to be that, or I shouldn't say supposed to, that can be that size too. They're called currant tomatoes. So that's a class of tomatoes, so it's even smaller than the cherry or grape tomato class. Yeah. So I would call that maybe, well, in the world of blueberries, it would be a low bush blueberry. Yeah. So that is probably about the size of a blueberry.
Yeah, this is currently the size of a blueberry, and it's never going to get bigger.
But a full, mature-ish tomato, I would say. Okay, so you said this plant is 2 years old.
No. I've had the garden for 2 years.
Okay.
But I started this around Christmas, or maybe in January sometime. Yep. And it got big, but nothing came out of it.
So in short, I just wish we had our wonderful extension specialists. I'm glad that they do what they do. So thanks to all of them.
That's where you go if you need help. Is that what you're saying? You've got people. You don't have to know all the things. Okay.
Yes, they do a wonderful job of extension specialists. And then even on NPR on Fridays, they do Iowa State University, their extension specialists have horticulture hour. And some of the things they answer just amaze me. So a simple thing about tomatoes, we grow them in Iowa. just like we would say annuals. So they are here to live one lifespan through a season and then they die. But the interesting thing about a tomato, so if you look at that tomato plant, if you notice it's kind of creeping down.
It is.
Right? And so we'll show you later on in this episode and talk to you about why it creeps down and what on the main stem of that tomato plant, those are small little trichomes that are actually searching for soil. They're searching for roots. Because natively, in much warmer climates, tomatoes can be perennials, meaning that they can go reproduce. So essentially, the roots come down, the ripe fruit falls down, and just like Mother Nature intended, that nice little tomato was meant to fall on a piece of soil, degrade, and germinate new seeds. The
seeds will be
and have new plants. So that's its reproductive system. So essentially, you've taken away its reproductive rights, but it's okay. Because
that's terrible. I feel bad.
That's what we're meant to do. So in other words, that plant, you'll need it to go through another reproductive cycle for then it to bear fruit again.
Okay.
So I think you should keep onto it just for a mere friend alone.
Okay.
Tom Hanks would be proud.
Yeah.
But in other ways,
I'm not letting it go. It's been here for a while.
But in other ways, we'll show you how to do new tomato plants.
Okay. Okay. So, let's get started with that. So we're on my deck, which is where primarily food grows in my yard.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what, what do you think the best way to start is? You know what I mean? Like what type of containers, what size of containers, what are some good types of tomatoes? Knowing that I myself am new to the tomato liking world.
Yes.
Smaller is better. You know, like I'm not going to eat I'm not just going to like tear into a big, huge, juicy red tomato with like nothing else on it.
And not the most, maybe some.
You probably.
There's a lot of you out there. You know, I'm actually not.
You're not that.
I'm not a big tomato fan. When I started this, tomatoes weren't quite for me.
Yeah.
But as I kind of learned and developed flavor profiles, I really like tomatoes paired with things.
Yeah.
And now when I sell to different restaurants and these chefs come up with these exquisite dishes of, one time a chef did a difference between, like, they'd put mint leaves and goat cheese in the caprese, so it wasn't like the classic basil and tomato flavor, and just the way that they presented it was so different. So that's my favorite way to eat a tomato: bacon, mayonnaise, tomato, salt and pepper, all of those things where my heart kind of says, you just lost 30 seconds of your lifespan.
But it was worth it.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite. So to clarify for all of our listeners, we're going to really discuss today talking about tomatoes for your porch.
Yes.
Yep. We're not talking about what Jennie does sometimes when we go out and plant these massive rows out in the field, because it's very different when you put a tomato in a pot versus the ground. Yeah. And most of us grow in pots because that's where we can find the best environment.
Right. That's what I can handle.
Yes.
I cannot handle your level of tomatoes.
Yes.
I've seen it. Like
the whole county would be drunk on Bloody Marys. Yeah. We'd have so much produce. Everybody would be having a Bloody Mary every hour.
Yeah. Nightmare.
Yes. And so it's also a great way when you plant in a pot is that you can find the best place for sunlight. So there's a few things most plants need. Obviously, all plants need, but tomatoes as well. Tomatoes always do something that we call heavy feeders.
Okay.
They like food.
Okay. So
that means that they want fertilizer. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they need food, they need light, and water.
And they don't need soil? Do they need soil?
Actually,
these grew without soil.
Yeah, they don't need soil. They have to have some sort of substrate for the roots to grow in, so you can do this hydroponically through water and nutrients and things.
Right.
But typically they do prefer soil, and that's what most of us have on hand.
Right.
So we're going to do some potting. So let's talk about the tomatoes that we have. You and I each have our own plants.
Yes.
Okay, and we thought that we did two types of plants. So there's regular plant. If you go to a garden center, you'll find a plant like this. I'm so glad that you grabbed Bonnie's, because Bonnie's is a customer of ours on the Full-Time World. Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. So Bonnie's, yes, they're down in the great city of the USA, which is Union Springs, Alabama.
Okay.
They have their own world down there, and it's all based upon this family and their wonderful company. So Bonnie plants used to use these types of pots.
Okay.
So if you ever saw Bonnie plants before, they would always have these types of COWPOTS, compost pots, cardboard, whatever people identify this color and this look as.
Did you know that I went to the COWPOTS farm?
Oh yes, and she came to one of the FarmHer events.
Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, is that made out of poop?
Talk about an amazing woman.
Right.
She was
I love that.
really
I love that
cool.
story.
I was glad to connect.
So it's a biodegradable pot.
Correct, yes. And so this brand is actually called Fertile, and a friend of mine is the importer into the U.S. And what I like about these pots is, number one, they're OMRI certified. So those are my customers that are really prefer an organic background. That's really important to them. But what I like about them is they don't use a glue. They use heat to compress the pot. And I notice a lot more that I can see the roots can come through the bottom, which is really important because transplants, like other solanaceous crops, they suffer from what we call transplant shock. So it's really important that you do not take it and flip it out of the pot, shake it up a bit, and throw it in something and give it this stress, this abiotic stress to kind of go through.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So you've got one that's in a plastic pot.
Yep,
I do those too, and I've got one in compost. So the only difference between these two plants, I'll put my whole pot in, and you're going to take yours out.
I'm going to take mine out.
We have two different types of varieties. What's yours say?
Mine says it's a super sweet 100, and I had no idea. I was like, I don't know if Jenny's going to approve. I'm going to pick out one plant, and that's what I picked.
I'm on Team Margie for the long stretch, okay?
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, those are great tomatoes because they have a tight cluster, a tight habitat, and they are big producers.
Okay.
And so those will bear a lot of the class we call cherry tomatoes, most people are familiar with.
Yep.
Which the two plants that we both chose are cherry tomatoes, and the suggestion, the reason why, is those are really great ones for pots.
Okay.
A lot of people think that they would really like to have that BLT, big beefsteak slicing tomato. So if you think about the size of the fruit, sometimes the plant size coincides with the size of the fruit. So those plants can be just as big, and they really don't do well in pots.
Okay.
Unless you have a pot that is really kind of more like a hot tub size.
Right.
Then I would suggest 2 plants per hot tub.
Hey, Tony, should we replace our hot tub with tomatoes?
Why
Beefsteak tomatoes.
Beefsteak tomatoes in the hot tub.
Instead of beefsteak Tony. Wait, is that a thing? Okay.
Perfect. So she's got a super sweet 100, which is going to be a red cherry tomato. And then I decided to choose a blueberry or indigo blueberry tomato. Okay. So this is an heirloom that is bred from Wild Boar Farms.
Okay.
And I got the seeds through Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds in Mansfield, Missouri. Rareseeds.org is where I found the seeds. One thing to note, they were so overwhelmed with this spring, they shut down their entire website. They didn't just stop taking orders, they just had a note on the website. They just said, we just cannot bear any of this right now, and so they shut down.
And so in the world of people who sell plants, they're seeing an overwhelming amount of home growers.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, exploratory. I have some, number one, I have some time on my hands. Number 2, I'm teaching my children, and we need to have science class for the day.
Right.
Number 3, I'm also slightly concerned about the food system. Right?
Yeah, all of these are legit things.
Yes, all things I've thought about. And then I think with the world of social media, since we can share, I think that it's gotten some interest generation going. And so it makes it super exciting, especially for those of us like myself, which is a really small transplant sale person in the spring, to be able to have heirloom tomatoes kind of all throughout the city to people I've never met before. It makes it wonderful.
Yeah, and I hope they keep with it, right? Like, that's the thing after this. Like,
they don't know this, but I have their contact information now.
You're going to tell them why they should keep with it.
Every spring they're going to hear from Jennie Smith, it's time to get your tomato sale on. Yes. Okay, so I think we will be best if we put the pots on the table. Do you think?
Yep.
Okay, let's clear our space here.
And how big of a, so I've got different sizes of pots. We've got a few back here. I need a drink of this.
I was going to say, is it time for a tomato break yet?
Yep. It's a time for
making sure that we're on the right track.
While I said I don't like tomatoes, I clearly do like tomato products.
So something that's really important. So here's a really great, you picked out some really great pots. So this size pot.
Great size, not great quality. Look at, these are old. We use these.
The best kind of pot is one that has had a lot of use.
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of stories within these pots.
That is good. Then we have the best kind of pot.
So a lot of people ask this question. How many tomatoes can I have per pot?
And this is do you have a guess of what gallon size this pot is? Like, if you had to guess, I'm not good at this.
I would say that this has got to be somewhere between like a 10 gallon-ish.
Okay.
Yep, 10, 15 maybe?
Yeah, 15, yeah. They're big,
They're
right?
big, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So a lot of times I tell people that if they want to do a small plant and they're just getting started, the minimum size you can start with is a 5-gallon bucket.
Okay.
So most people can identify with 5-gallon size.
Okay.
Right? So these are nice. These are slightly bigger, and these are great.
Yep.
You get to put, there's a general rule of thumb, 1 tomato per pot.
See, I would have tried to pack like 4 in here.
This is definitely not a hanging basket. And it might not be as bearing as we thought. Sometimes if it's too packed, it can't get into reproductive stage. It's not.
You're going to end up with more pretty green plants.
Beautiful green tomato plants.
Okay.
So what's important is always a good rule of thumb, 1 plant per pot.
Okay.
Unless you've got something massive or a trough or raised beds naturally, then you can.
Okay.
In the field, we suggest that I put my tomato plants 6 feet apart because I have them on a grid system and I need enough airflow because when you have really dense hundreds of plants, there's not a lot of good air.
Yeah.
So, but when you're outside on the deck, you don't really have to follow that rule so much.
Right.
One really neat thing you could do that I recommend is that once we plant these tomato pots and it gets slightly warmer out, I would take and either sprinkle some basil seeds or go get some little basil transplants.
And put them around there,
around the
edge.
On the side.
Yeah. I've seen that before. I actually was at a farm where they planted some little flowers. I can't remember what they were. I'll have to go back and look. And they were, I mean, they looked like they were just for decoration, but she said the butterflies loved them. And so it brings pollinators in. And I was like, oh, did tomatoes need pollinators though? I don't know.
No, tomatoes are open pollinated.
Okay.
Yes, unless under a greenhouse condition. So, and outside, heirlooms are open pollinated.
Okay.
So that makes a greater benefit, but it's good to have pollinators around the garden because you got other things that are going on too.
Right.
Yes.
It's never a bad thing to. It was. I feel like maybe just for prettiness and the space that was
especially
around
when you've got. So you're going to have a big tomato plant that's got a lot of height to it. It's nice to kind of have some structure down around the base too.
I'm with you.
Nice.
I'm with you. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So in the pots we started with, it's always good to put like a little bit of rock gravel, right? So
at the bottom.
Yep. And it can be anything. Like sometimes I kind of go steal from the neighbor's beautiful landscape. I just need a cup.
Hey, Selena.
You know, I don't need a cup of sugar. I just need a cup of pea gravel or rocks for the bottom of my
There
pot.
probably is rocks in the bottom of these, honestly. Because who wants to fill this whole thing with soil?
No, it's a lot.
For drainage too?
So it's one important thing, make sure there's a hole in the bottom, okay? And then, because especially with 5-gallon buckets, is there a hole in the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I didn't want to look at mine just in case.
Who knows what's on the bottom of it too?
Oh yeah, there's a hole in the bottom. Wonderful.
Good.
We're safe. We're safe. Okay. And what the rocks do is it provides a nice little space for water to drain.
Okay.
Because one difficult thing that will be a constant challenge is, when do I water this? How much water does it get? So we'll talk about that a little bit later once we get these planted for some care tips. But okay, so we're going to take soil. There's plenty of places you can get soil. There's plenty of different varieties. It's almost like kind of choosing a tomato plant, if you will. So it just all depends on yours. I like to have a little bit of perlite in mind, so that's going to be this nice little white piece right here.
Oh, it looks like styrofoam?
Kind of looks like styrofoam, yep. So it breaks down. And what it does is it helps with air and it helps with drainage within the soil. Because if this was just soil, or say we dug some soil out of the backyard, it would still work.
Super thick.
But it would compact, right? The other thing that's really important is we talked about fertilizer, and I told you that tomatoes are heavy feeders. So when we plant these, we're going to want to give them a little bit of food. You can do it during planting, you can do it after, but at some point in the game. Okay? So, all right, so we've got these about full. Let's give yours maybe a little bit more.
Be careful. There was a toad in there before, but it's gone now. I've been told.
I'll give you $10 to put your head in there.
I'm afraid to even stick my hand in there. No, the toad is gone.
Is the toad gone?
You would see me have.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, the toad's gone.
The toad's gone. Of course it's gone. Like it has to go. So get one.
So we've got a big thing of Miracle Grow potting mix here, right? Like it's got some good stuff in it, and this I can tell you has been around since last year. Obviously, that's why the toad was in there.
It still works. Okay, get one more.
But it's nice
for your pot.
Yeah, I don't have enough in here.
Didn't work.
I already didn't trust
That's
you.
That's good. If you look at you shouldn't ever, you know me too well.
That's not enough, obviously, but you want to fill,
Feeds up to 6 months.
Oh, so we shouldn't use stuff from last year.
No, I think you can reuse things at certain times. Yes, of course. Okay. But the point being is that this version of the Miracle Grow potting mix does have a fertilizer
has food in it that will go up 6 months. I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So our pots are pretty full.
Yep.
Okay.
They are. Yep.
And let's talk about one of the most important things.
Okay.
Okay. So you see your tomato plant, and then look at the main stem. And if you look at it, it has these tiny little hairs on it.
I see them.
Okay. So those are called trichomes.
Okay.
Okay. So those trichomes fulfill multiple purposes. One of the major ones is pests and repellents. There's a little pest called mites. It is of the arachnid family, and they have a difficult time. So that's kind of a natural repellent that this plant has to kind of keep them. Okay. So the main point when we're planting them,
doesn't have as much hair, but it has some hair. Your plant has a lot more hairs on it.
Just like humans, right?
Yeah. They're all different.
They're all different. We're all different in so many ways, but yours still has them.
Yep, it does.
Okay, and do you notice the main stem of mine's kind of purple too? So the genetic of this one, called the blueberry, it's interesting that the plant kind of has a little bit of
that color a little bit.
So all of those trichomes are going to produce roots.
Okay.
Okay. Something that we talk about in probably family therapy or anything, general consensus is that the stronger the foundation, the better the household, right? We all need a strong foundation. So same thing with plants. With plants, the better the root system, the stronger the plant. So if we have the ability to put more roots in a plant and the structure, we want to take advantage of it.
Okay.
A lot of times people will say, you know, they want to kind of take it and then they put it in and they think they just put just enough soil up to the top. No, we want to bury the plant as far possible as we can while it still can react with photosynthesis.
Okay, that's interesting because I've always been on that where I'm like, oh, I don't want to cover the plant up with soil.
Right.
Okay, so bury it as far as you can, but let the leaves still poke out.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to make holes kind of in the middle. Kind of just dig through, dig.
Who knows what we'll find in here? There's nothing in there.
That just makes it even better and interesting, right?
You never know. These do sit under my deck
I think
all
I just
winter.
found a penny.
Maybe. Possibly.
Possibly. Okay. Now, we always want to take our tag identifiers, pull those out.
Yep.
I like to keep them, and then I'll stick them in there later, because sometimes I forget what I plant.
You know, yeah.
I think that those are always nice. Okay.
I like that, too.
So, take your fingers. Now tip it upside down.
So my fingers are like it's like a peace sign, right?
Just like
and
a
then
peace
put
sign.
the plant in the middle.
Yep.
Tip the plant upside down.
Yep, and give the bottom a nice little...
And squeeze on the bottom to get it out of there.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
I got it.
So, you're going to, with grace, you're going to take it and flip it back over. Excellent, just like that.
Got it.
Now, if your plant was something that we call root bound, which it was not, root bound would mean it's got really tight. You can see all the white roots coming around. Kind of break that up a little bit. And with these pots, I always tear the bottom of the pot open.
So they can get out.
Yep. And so then putting the pot in. Okay. Now, we have already wet the soil, but when you do plant your tomatoes, what you would do, I will use my Bloody Mary for demonstration, but I most certainly would not waste. You would take your hole, then add water to saturate the soil, as our soil is saturated. Yep. And then you put the plant in. Plants don't need water from the leaves.
They need it from the bottom.
That's the respiratory organs. They need it from the bottom, right? Okay. And so then we kind of take in, and now is I like to think I'm a potter sometimes, you know? You kind of take and you want to feel the soil and kind of work it a little bit so that
moving it around.
Yep, moving it around.
We aren't like tamping it down.
No,
we're just gently filling it around.
So that it's got a little bit of structure. I like to leave, similar to planting trees, a little well around.
Okay.
So because sometimes if you build more of a volcano, when water comes,
it can't get in there.
It's going to roll down the sides.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to build a little bit of a well. Now, if these plants, for this purpose of our wonderful podcast, I'm going to take it back out.
Yep.
If this plant was much taller, what I would do is these side branches, I would take and I would pinch.
You would? You'd just tear them off?
Well, that's a good word to not use.
Pinch them off.
Pinch them off.
Okay.
Here comes Margie, bull in a china shop. The most important thing is you have an open wound now. So sometimes, and especially when you're planting a lot at a time, if you start tearing too much, you now have open wounds and your plant has more susceptibilities to diseases.
Okay.
So if my plant was much taller, I needed to. The other thing you can do is what people say is trenching them.
Okay.
Have you ever heard that term, trenching them?
No, I have not.
Okay. So trenching them means it's a tall plant and you're going to lay it on its side. So essentially you're going to take the plant and lay it on its side and gently caress the top up and fill around because the plant is so tall.
Okay, so that way it can, I got you. Okay, that makes sense.
And last thing, since we're not going in chronological order for this
It's fine.
For this episode.
Just keep listening. You never know what nuggets you're going to get.
That's right. Absolutely. We want you to actually listen to the whole episode so that you can get the story.
Yes. Yes.
So we do a process called hardening off. And this is important for all of our listeners to know, especially this time of year, if they're up in Iowa or similar climates that are much cooler. Mm-hmm. So we all go to the greenhouse or come to Jennie's tomato plant sale, and you get this wonderful transplant.
Yep.
And you're so excited because the weather is 70 degrees and you want to go plant it.
Right.
Okay. So number one, tomatoes specifically will not do anything unless the soil is 60 degrees.
Okay.
Most people don't keep a soil probe.
No.
If they do, maybe.
I don't have one.
I don't either.
I have a meat thermometer. Is that the same?
I wish it was, but actually I kind of want to try it to find out. So they won't do anything until the soil is 60 degrees. It's important to kind of monitor that phosphorus. So if the people that think I want to get the tomatoes out there early to get the fruit, you're really not doing much for the justification of the plant. But when you go to your garden center, think about where those tomatoes were. They were in, let's call it a nursery.
Yep.
Okay? So what's important for them, it's like kind of nobody ever wants to let toddlers out into the real world to go get jobs.
Right.
They'd fail miserably.
Right.
Like they need that extra time. So what we do is we do this process called hardening off.
Yep.
It takes a couple days, but you need to take your tomato transplants or peppers or eggplants, take them outside in the shade for the first day, bring them back in at night. Second day, a little bit longer, maybe put them out in the sun, bring them back at night. Third day, maybe that's the night that you leave them outside, pending weather conditions.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're exposing that transplant to multiple different conditions so that when you go to stick the tomato plant in its final resting home,
It can handle.
it can handle it.
Yeah.
And we're just putting this plant through we call it transplant shock.
Yeah, it's traumatic.
Yes, it's very traumatic for it. They really don't like their root systems messed with a whole lot. So that's why it's important to do the hardening off process. And I had a lot of questions about that this weekend because they were so excited the sun was shining and they were ready to put their plants in the ground.
I'm the same way. I want instant gratification. I'm going to go get that plant and I'm going to put it in a pot and then, yeah.
Well,
okay.
It sounds like next year we should do a whole episode on hardening off.
We should. I just learned a lesson.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so our plants are in the pots.
Yep.
Watered from the bottom, not from the top. And now we will hurry up and wait. We're going to want to monitor it. So sometimes I told you they're heavy feeders. So there's lots of different fertilizers that you can use. There's organic, there's non-organic. There's plenty of different choices that you have as a home gardener. I prefer to use probably some water-soluble ones, or they also make some time-release granules.
Okay.
So that you can shake in the pot.
Okay.
And then when you water, it's this controlled release. That makes it pretty convenient.
I think I have both. I do not have organic ones. I believe they're both the same brand as the soil, right? Like, and so,
Miracle Grow makes a specific fertilizer just for tomatoes, too. And you can find it really anywhere that you can kind of get at your local hardware store.
But it matters for them to bear fruit, right? To have that fertilizer.
You don't have to.
Okay.
But the stronger the plant and the stronger the... Fertilizers are so funny these days. The stronger the plant and the more food that you can give it, the better build that you're going to have it.
Got it. I need a drink.
I do too. I feel like there's a Saturday Night Live episode coming out of this.
Yeah, I don't know what, but it'll be good. Yeah. Kidding.
So nonetheless, we'll put these in a sunny spot. You want to put your tomato in the sunniest spot possible.
Okay.
They really like sun.
And in a pot that's this size, say 10 to 15 gallons, water it how often?
That's a good question. Are you going to have it where it can get rain?
I am going to have it right here in the corner of my deck so it can get rain, it can get sun. After about, 10 o'clock in the morning, it gets sun all the way.
Yes.
So,
yes. So that's always the balance that you have then. You know, if it rains for 4 days in a row, your watering regime will be different than if it doesn't rain for 4 days in a row.
Good point.
Here's a good check. You know, we really don't need those soil probes anyway.
No. Oh. Yep.
Okay? When you stick your finger in there as far as it'll go, and don't be shy, as far. Okay. If you can feel moisture, then you're good.
I don't feel any moisture, so these need some water.
Okay.
Do you feel moisture? A little, maybe a little bit.
I feel moisture in my pot, but I pre-watered mine before I put the plant in there.
Okay.
Yeah, yours is more dry than mine.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yours is more dry than mine, definitely.
Okay.
So then put some moisture. And remember,
give it a good drink right on top.
Give it a good drink, and you don't need to water so much. So I think that I should have looked at some of the statistics on pots. Oh, I don't even want to quote it because what if it's wrong? That's okay if it's wrong. I think it's like you need to be able to water it like half a gallon per massive pot per week with no rain.
Okay.
Something like that. So there's a if you look online, there's a volume of water expected. So when it rains,
keep it wet.
Keep it wet,
Moist.
but let it dry out.
Yeah, okay.
Plants really like to take a drink and then dry out, and then take a drink and then dry out.
Okay.
Because if you keep it too wet, that is just allowing the bottom of the pot to have any sort of disease, pathogens, just a breeding ground for those. And that's what we don't want.
No.
And especially difficult since you can't see them.
So question, I'm going to fertilize it at the beginning. Do I need to keep fertilizing it? You said there's a shake and feed kind. I mean, I guess maybe it depends on what kind.
Yeah.
My soil has some fertilizer in it too.
Yeah.
Is that something I need to like continue on as it grows?
You know, that's a good question. So you will still get plants if you don't fertilize.
Okay. Yeah.
Bar none. For the
Except for this
fairly
one.
speaking. Except for that one. However, look at the fertilizer and look at the label. Always follow the label directions. Those are always great guidelines that we share.
I agree with that.
Yep,
completely.
always follow label directions.
It's amazing what you will learn if you actually read the label.
Absolutely, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, would thank us for that.
Yes.
Yes. So if you've got a controlled release fertilizer, you should be pretty good throughout the whole season.
Okay.
Yep. A lot of things that you'll start seeing. So if it's a non-controlled release, then I would feed it when you plant it, and then I would wait 2 weeks, and then I would come back and I would feed it again.
Okay.
But nothing something that you really need to be that diligent upon. In the field, what we do is we scrape old cattle lots that we've had that have just been sitting. So these have had manure over the time and course of years, and we take that and spread it over the field, and that is my fertilizer. And I don't fertilize them anytime after that.
Yep.
So don't overthink it. That's definitely true.
Okay.
Should we be pessimistic and talk about the uh-ohs or what ifs?
Like what are some of the things that can go wrong?
Okay, so a lot of times where you have a tomato plant, your tomato plant's going to start growing, go ahead and trim the bottom leaves off.
Okay.
They're fulfilling no purpose on the plant in terms of its growth habitat. And when you water and soil splashes up on that, clogs, and then it can cause disease.
Okay.
So there's no need for those. So a lot of times you can trim those bottom plants.
Okay.
Okay. A lot of times people will ask, do I sucker or prune my tomato plant? It's a common question that gets asked. And what that means essentially is this one's just dying and coming back to life every day.
It's back out.
So that means that you have one main stem, and then you have these tiny guys that come off the side.
Yep.
And you would go pinch those.
Okay.
So what you're trying to do is create a plant that does not produce as much fruit, but the fruit that it does produce will be really big.
Okay.
Okay. And if you don't sucker or prune the plants, you're going to have lots of laterals and lots of branches, and you'll have more fruit, but they'll be much smaller.
Okay.
So if you're looking to enter that tomato into the Iowa State Fair, then you need to be able to sucker. Maybe.
If you want to grow the tiniest tomato on the face of the earth like this
you might have won. I don't know if anybody else can beat it.
Gonna roll right off.
People a lot of times ask about, what about disease and early blights and things like that. I will give you one piece of guidance, especially with heirlooms that we raise. It's going to come.
Yep.
It will come. You'll start to see yellow discoloration on the leaves.
Okay.
And when that happens, please call, and we'll get you some tomatoes that you can eat.
Okay.
You'll still be able to produce fruit, but blight is something that's really difficult, and at the home gardener level, you're really not going to want to go through that much trouble to go fight it. There's really nothing that is that economical or preventable.
Right.
It's kind of more of a reactionary situation.
Okay.
So that makes it okay.
Yeah. So that's a good reason to not just have one plant, but to have a few in case, right? Maybe, like if you're me.
I need to put you on a commercial.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe buy more than one from Jennie.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then also to have the little bit of a variety too.
Right.
It's nice to have some different tastes. I mean, tomatoes you can do everything from them. I mean, the tomato that you're going to cook with and make that, as some Italians call it gravy, and you're going to have the soups and sauces. Those are not going to be the tomatoes that you want to eat for fresh eating on caprese salads or some nice bruschetta.
Right. Okay, so these are going to grow. Obviously, the fruit is going to come, and I know when to pick them because they turn red. This is basic knowledge.
That's right, yes.
But Erin,
yes.
She's our caller. She's not here, but she had a question.
She called in.
She felt that their tomatoes split a lot of the time. Like they're not quite ready to pick, and then all of a sudden, boom, they've split. So she was like, what do I like? Yeah, what's going on here?
If she could mount an umbrella on top of the plant to prevent rain, and then she measures out accurate amounts of rain,
she could prevent that.
In fact, if we could get her a FarmHer umbrella and she tries that this year, it wouldn't be that bad.
Seems like a summer well
Never
spent.
tried it, but there's always a good reason for a trial, you know? So cracking, yes. Certain varieties or cultivars are more susceptible to cracking because the skins are thinner.
Okay.
Kind of similar to our body organs, right? We can have thicker skins or thinner skins, not just metaphorically speaking, but literally.
Yep.
So tomatoes are the same way. So some tomatoes, I grow one called Mortgage Lifter. It's a really popular heirloom.
Okay.
They have really thin skins, and people that don't prefer that skin really like that element about the tomato.
Yep.
What comes along with a thinner skin?
They crack.
Yeah, more susceptible to cracking.
Okay.
But one thing that you can do is to be able to regulate the water. So what happens is the water content. So when the plant gets a lot of moisture and then it dries out and then a lot more moisture, especially when it's going to set fruit, then you get into the point where it's setting fruit, and then if you get a lot of moisture, then it's kind of growing. And if you think about our bodies with stretch marks, I mean, I grew a lot in junior high and early high school.
It happens fast.
It happens really fast, yes. But please don't rub vitamin E oil on your plants. That won't stop it from cracking.
Yeah.
So more consistent watering is the answer to trying to prevent
consistent watering. Okay. And can you think of off the top of your head, or is it something she could Google about thicker skinned varieties? Like, is there, I mean, if she's going for a bigger tomato, I don't know.
I think she needs to stop complaining. Bless her heart. Erin? I think you could, actually. In the world of heirlooms, more certainly, because they have a little bit more about their growth and habitat. Hybrids are actually more bred to be, hybrids are bred for specific things. Disease resistance, growth, size, days to maturity, all of these elements, which really makes it convenient to get a mass amount of food somewhere in a certain time, right? But we're not concerned about that here. So I think Erin should call Jennie Smith and consult about what tomatoes we could research.
Sounds like a good idea.
Have some nice thicker skin.
Yep, I like it. Well, I can't wait for these to grow. I'm not going to eat a lot of them, but I'm going to eat a few of them.
Never say never. In fact, I have a shirt from FarmHer that says that.
It's true. Because I probably did tell you at one point that I would never eat a tomato, but I did, like, I actually bought some last summer. Like, I bought tomatoes and ate them. So
Kaizen, small incremental steps. Kaizen, baby.
Yep. Okay, Jennie. Thank you. If people want to find Jennie's tomatoes, Jennie in general, where do they go?
They should go to Facebook and look up Butcher Crick Farms. Where I'm from, it's a crick, not a creek.
Yep.
So they can find me there, and there's contact information, and we actually do still have some heirloom tomato transplants available. So if they want to get on really quick, we'll have them probably through the end of May.
Okay, good deal.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging with us here in Shining Bright.